Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us during our spring and summer webinar series of subjects of interest and concern to parents of individuals, including children and youth with disabilities. My name is Godfrey Rivera. I am the principal parent training located at the Metropolitan Parent Center. You see our logo and our information about our organization. The Metropolitan Parent Center is part of Synergia, which is a, a community-based nonprofit organization dedicated to serve the needs of parents of youth and children with disabilities. We have many services. We have many services that are available to parents, and I welcome you to visit our website, which is right here website, which is right here, so you can get information about our services and also to view our calendar for future webinars that will be taking place during the month of June. Once again, my name is Godfrey Rivera. I conduct workshops and webinars regarding a variety of special education themes. Today's theme will be about a very important topic that I find uh, incredibly interesting and important for parents to be aware of. Okay, okay, let me straighten this out here. All right, right here. I apologize for that. All right, I think we're good to go now. All right, great. So here is the topic that we'll be discussing today, planning for the life of an individual with special needs. That, as we understand, is a very complicated process. As we can see here, this webinar will discuss many aspects of what that means of transitioning to adulthood. When I conduct workshops, even if I conduct webinars or workshops in preschool centers, etc., I always tell to parents that everything that they do, including uh, in terms of providing for the needs of their very young children, toddlers, etc., everything that they do should be designed to help prepare their child for life after school. Our children spend many, many years in school receiving all types of educational supports, etc. But they will spend the majority of their life outside of school. So, what does that mean? What does that imply or mean for our parents in terms of learning how to secure the life of our child and all that? So let's talk about that. But before we do, I just want to address some housekeeping points here. Let me bring up that slide. Why is this? Okay, why can't I see that? All right, I don't know. Let me go back here. All right, let's see. Okay, all right. So before, yeah, here are some other points that I want to discuss uh, before I start the presentation. Okay. So first of all, the first bullet indicates that the discussion will focus on the theme of planning for the transition to adulthood for youth with disabilities. I know there are other concerns that you may want to address, but this is a lot of information, so I want for you to understand that we're going to focus on this theme. Please also note that all participants will be muted. What that means is that you should be able to hear me, but because due to the nature and the amount of content we have to go through, we think this is the best approach. I hope and assume that you will have questions or comments to make, and you will be able to do so at the end of the presentation. Let me see if I can show you how that's done. There will be um, this little spot that you'll see. It's called the chat box, and this is where you can type your message, and I'll be able to review your messages toward the end and address them and give you some responses to that. So, okay, so just to make sure that we understand that point. Um, as I said, we'll have around 15 to 20 minutes at the end of the presentation for your questions and comments that you can record on the chat box that I just indicated. Please type your questions in the chat box, which is located at the bottom right of your screen. And also, at the end of the webinar, when we sign off, you will see a little link that will take you to a survey that we would like for you to respond to. We really welcome and look forward to your responses regarding this topic that we're discussing today. Okay, mhm, from current slide, but it's not. Okay. All right, so basically, this is how we can address the topic here. Um, when we are talking about the life of our children as they become older, as they become adolescents, we need to be aware of many important issues in terms of where we would what kind of life do we wish for our children to have? So, for youth with disabilities, families and schools should work together to plan the students' transition from school to work, continuing education, or some other options that we will discuss. Essentially, the purpose of transition planning is to help the student prepare to be an independent young adult after he or she has finished her education, his education. So here's some of the questions that I like to address during these presentations. Here we go. Thank you. Uh, when we're thinking about our children's future, uh, these are some of the points of view or issues that you should be thinking about. The first bullet, what are your hopes and dreams for your child when they complete high school? Um, one theme that I'll be repeating a lot is that you should consider yourself experts on about your child. You have been raising him or her for many years, and you know him or her very well. And that will be an important um, tool that you will have when you are involved in conversations with the school team. But another point that I just added recently uh, is the second question on the first bullet. In terms of conversations that you have with your child, um, they are already teenagers, they're youth, they're in high school, they'll be preparing to exit high school, and then um, some of the issues involving our children in these conversations too. So one thing that I think we should start thinking about, if we haven't done it yet, is to engage your child in a conversation to ask him or her to express her hopes, her dreams, his hopes, his dreams for the future. What do they see themselves doing in the future in life after school? So you might want to, find do that in the best way that's most appropriate for your child. As I said before, you are an expert of your child. You know the most effective way to communicate with him or her in order to get some responses that you can use to hopefully make some decisions in the future. So the second bullet we think about about how we can help our child prepare for employment, post-secondary education, and or independent living. What kind of skills does my child need to possess and to be able to use if he or she wants to pursue college, secondary education? We either whether it's a community college setting or a four-year university, what needs to be done in order to make that happen, and in order to have my child have access to that opportunity? Or as you'll see later on, we'll have other options that we can discuss. Once again, everything that we do is based to help prepare our child for a future after school and to have them live as independently as possible, considering their personal situation and their needs. Okay, so here's another important point that I'll be addressing over and over again. How do you, as a parent, become an effective advocate for your child during the transition process? What kind of information should you possess? What kind of questions should you ask? Um, how do you make sure that your input is considered when the team is making decisions about this very important issue? So how do we become, uh, you know, involved in this situation? Okay, and and the last bullet is really important. Um, what can you do to teach your child to be an effective self-advocate? When I see and speak to parents who have adolescent children who are leaving high school, and work was done to help prepare them for future after school. To me, that is a really important indicator of a parent who is an effective advocate. You need to teach your child to advocate for himself or herself to the best of his ability. It's really, really important. Who's going to be there for your child when you are no longer able to support him or her? So, yes, do everything you can to teach your child the rights that he or she and you are entitled to meet the needs according to federal law, which is called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, according to the acronym. Okay. All right. So here, so the question here we have to look at is, what is transition about? When we talk about transition, what does it mean? So let's approach that question from a legal point of view. Uh, don't worry, this presentation is not designed for attorneys. It's for parents, basically, and other interested players that want to get some information about this theme. So under the IDEA law, once again, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, federal law, the term transition services it means developing a coordinated set of activities for a student with disabilities that is designed within a results oriented process that promotes movement from school to post-school activities that include post-school education, college, as I mentioned. Also, other options that include vocational education. We'll address that a little bit later on. Integrated employment, including supported employment, and continuing adult education. And the last bullet here is adult services, independent living, or community participation. Once again, you know your child better than I do. You have ideas about what he or she is capable of, and you definitely understand what his or her needs are and what supports he or she will need in order to be able to thrive after he or she exits the school system. So we'll address these points along the way in the presentation. Okay, regarding the transition, the IEP must include the following. Yes, the IEP uh, abides by IDEA, and the IDEA law requires that the school team, including parents, address transition issues when the child is at least beginning high school. So one of the things that the IEP of that child must include are measurable post-secondary goals in the areas that include training, education, and employment, and where appropriate, independent living skills. Once again, these options um, are are designed to meet the individual where he or she is at right now in terms of capacities, in terms of needs, in terms of what interests the student, etc. So it's a very comprehensive um, package that we're designing, and they must be addressed in the context of the child's IEP plan, the individualized education plan that all students with disabilities um, must have in order to benefit from an education. Uh, the reason why measurable is underlined is really important. Measurable means that in order to determine that this is a really effective measurable goal, uh, the individual who writes the goals, the team that writes the goal, have to be able to see if the child has accomplished that goal by either measuring its impact on the child, they're able to see or in another way measure the impact of the of the goal. So when we write a goal, the child will be able to understand or you know or engage transportation training to be able to get from school home and home to school. The goal that we write has to will indicate some language like the child will be able to successfully navigate leaving home, going down to the subway station, uh, sliding the card, getting on a subway train, and get off on the designated stop successfully. That's a really rough description of a goal, a measurable goal, but that's what I need to be able to see the results of that goal. If I see that the child was able to complete every component of that goal, we can determine that he or she has accomplished that goal. If the child hasn't accomplished that goal because he or she didn't understand or know how to, do something like get off at the appropriate stop, then we need to revisit that goal and at least rewrite it as maybe provide the individual with more supports to help him or her along. Also, annual goals must be based on age-appropriate transition assessments. Uh, Along the way, your child should be tested using different instruments to determine basically issues of interest and of interest to him or her. I'll explain that along in a little bit. And also annual goals that document the knowledge, skills the student is expected to achieve that will gradually prepare him or her to meet post-secondary goals. When the team is writing goals, they should realize that we can't all of a sudden have an expectation that the student will be able to accomplish everything that we have in the goals. It has to be a gradual step by step process where the student will be supported, coached, guided along, and with the expectation that he will be able to excuse me, successfully accomplish each component of that goal, with the end that at the end he'll be able to accomplish the entire goal in its entirety. Okay, let's see. Oops, sorry about that. Right here. Okay, so transition goals, etc., all are involved in the transition planning process. So essentially, if you want a rough definition of transition planning, it's to help the student with disabilities and their families think about the student's life after school, and in that context, identifying long-range goal. So yes, this should be, yeah, absolutely, the student must be involved, but it's also an issue that the family should engage also. Second bullet here, we say that transition planning is a formal process for helping students with IEPs think about what they want to do after high school and how to get there. So as I said it earlier, this planning process is a requirement by the IDEA law. Every student with an IEP at some point, usually when they are starting high school, sometimes earlier, the IEP must reflect transition issues and the transition process that are important for that person to have. One of the situations that takes place during this transition process is that a vocational assessment is conducted in order to measure a student's interests and abilities in job-related areas. This is really an important point because when I am talking to parents about this special ed issues, of course, we're going to talk about what the child's needs are, what some of the challenges are that he or she is facing. We need to develop ideas and plans to deal with that. But equally importantly, uh, people that work with your child, the teachers, the service providers, counselors, etc., we also need to understand what interests your child, what animates him or her, what makes him or her smile or feel good about something or himself. Quick example. Um, we know that uh, boys, males who are on the spectrum, they seem to boys seem to have a really powerful urge, or are driven, or inspired by technology. You present that young man, that student, with a tablet, laptop, and that's it. They are in a different world. They just love exploring and going through what is situation. So apparently, this individual has a love of technology or related, issues like that. So when we are conducting that vocational assessment, we should be aware of that, in order to be able to address his interests and abilities. Who knows how that young man's love of technology, of laptops and tablets, may lead to some kind of job-related situation after he or she completes his high school education. So it's not just about the issues and the challenges; it's also about the interests and abilities that that child exhibits. Really important to be aware of that. If it's not brought up, it's up to you to discuss it with the IEP team and other individuals. Things that animate your child, that make him or her laugh, smile, dance, and be a happy person. That's really good. Uh, this assessment should incorporate information gathered from the student, parent, teachers, and also a review of school records to determine skills, aptitudes, and interests. Yes, really important. And this is what I remind parents of this. Your job as an effective advocate is to teach your child to be his or her own advocate. I mentioned that a little while ago. Really important that you have conversations about this, and you address that information in the best way that your child can understand the information. You, as a parent, have understandings of how he or she listens and learns, and you can use that information to convey information of this sense to him or her, and pay attention to what he or she responds. Uh, uh, it's really important that that individual understand that he's telling you something that it may be of importance to him. So make sure that you act like it's important information to make sure that he can continues uh, conveying information in the future. In the future, okay, right here. All right. Um, Let me change the focus a little bit in terms of the educational, or component about this. The New York State Department of Education has identified these 10 areas that should be considered when planning transition activities and services that address annual goals. Once again, this is not a complete list. This is just a partial list of some of the issues and areas that the school IEP team and with the parents should be addressing when we're talking about transition activities planning for an individual with disabilities down the road. Of course, we're looking at educational concerns. What kind of education, what kind of goals, instructional experiences should that individual, should that child have that will help him prepare for life after school? So we need to look at the school, the curriculum, and see if and how it addresses that area. Briefly, then we have uh, legal and advocacy concerns. I repeat again, one of your main tasks as a parent of a child with a disability is to teach your child to be his or her own advocate to the best of his or her ability. Once again, you know him better than I do, and you should, if it's appropriate, address these issues with him or her. Go over the laws of his or her rights, and use different strategies and techniques to address these issues to him or her. Um, Number three, how about talking about personal independence or residential thing? What do you do if your child expresses the need to live on his or her own? Um, I know many parents will probably say, how can that possibly be? Please let it be possible. Your child is entitled to a life after school that meets his or her needs. Once again, if you and the IEP team have an understanding of this individual and can see how he or she can be supported to make this a reality, I think that should be addressed. We should not um, hold back our concerns about our individual, of our son or daughter, because you're thinking, oh my God, how can I let my child live on her own or his own? Um, and this is an issue that we encounter a lot when we have this conversation with parents. There's a lot of course, we all understand that we want our children to be safe and secure. That will always be a priority. But do you want him to always be safe and secure living at home with you if he or she, the individual, express an interest in living on his or her own? Please feel open to explore that area. There's a lot of resources that you can refer to help you learn how to engage this topic, how to deal with it. So please try not to um, limit your child's experiences or opportunities because of this concern for his or her safety. Of course, once again, it depends on the nature of the disability and its severity. I understand if we are talking about an autism individual who likes to roam, wander, you know, we that may not be a good individual a person that might be appropriate to live on his or her own. Here's one that I like to talk about: recreation and leisure. Uh, we all have things that we like to do in our spare time, and we're not working. Uh, Going to the ball game, concerts, or maybe just a walk in the park. We should talk about that too. Once again, we need to find out what things animate your child. Maybe he or she has expressed a love of painting, drawing. Let's create opportunities for that person to experience what that means. Uh, Chart paper, paint, crayons, whatever. Uh, Once again, we need to invoke individuals with disabilities that they are entitled to their own leisure time and recreation just like anyone else. If these individuals, some of them have secured jobs or are going to school, we uh, we should let them know that you don't have to be working or studying all the time. There are times where you can take dedicated to just doing things that you like and that make you feel uh, good and pleasant. So please, this is an issue that should be discussed with the rest of the team. How about financial concerns and income? Your child has obtained a job and is getting a paycheck. Uh, Unfortunately, the days where paper checks are used to pay individuals, while they still happen, less and less. Right now, many of these transactions are done via internet, virtually. Money is transferred. The company will transfer the person's paycheck to his or her bank. So you have to figure out, does your child understand what a bank is, what a bank does? That a bank is a place that is used to save or, accumulate money. And then, how does the children have access to that, his paychecks? Does he or she know how to navigate an ATM machine? Uh, uh, is he capable of navigating ATM machine? All are questions that you, as a parent, have every right to inquire of the other experts in the room and get answers that make sense, and see if these are some options that can be addressed and pursued when we are talking about life after school for my child. Okay, on the other side of the page, we have, how about medical and health concerns? Sometimes, due to the nature of the disability, some of our children are also subject to having health and medical issues. How are they going to be addressed? What happens if your child gets sick and needs to access medical help? Does he Does she know how to go about and finding an emergency care center where they can go and all that? Do they know what it is, what they do? Once again, these are some issues that you have every right to bring up to the team. Can we help our child, my child, understand what it is to get medical assistance if it's ever necessary? Uh, can she pick up the phone and dial 911 to request medical assistance? These are all life examples. So we have to make sure that if we think our child's going to live independently, uh, he or she will be able to handle these situations. Employment, we've been talking about along the way. What does that job look like? Will it be a job where they are supported by someone that makes sure that they do the job in its proper order and other issues? Number eight, transportation. I mentioned a little while ago. We might want to call it travel training. Um, so what does that mean? I mentioned an example of what that looks like. So this is another thing that we need to discuss when we are looking at transition activities and the process. Number nine, post-secondary college, continuing education. Um, Once again, if you think that your child can attend a 2-year school, a 2-year college, or a 4-year college, please bring it up in a conversation with school officials. It just requires planning, a lot of planning to make sure that when we're looking at universities or colleges, do they have an office, a department that's there to address and support individuals with disabilities? That is the very first thing that I mention to parents when they express interest in having their child attend post-secondary school. Uh, you need to visit their website, call up the school, and ask right away, do you have an office or department that is there to support individuals that have disabilities? That would be a good first step that you can take when you are examining this issue of post-secondary education or continuing education, and other support needs that also appear along the way that that are based on that child's specific understandings and needs. So these are just some of the areas that we need to have a very serious conversation about, or levels or different conversations regarding transition activities and transition planning for that individual. Okay, let me, wow, sorry, what happened here? Let me go, okay, sorry about that. I hit the wrong button here. All right, here's where. All right, let me talk about something that I was discussing with a parent who called, I think last week about this. It is something called a student exit summary. This is a very, very important document that needs to be in your child's file. And let me explain to you what it means. Basically, a student exit summary is a report provided to the student as they prepare to leave the school system. This summary lists the student's strengths, abilities, his or her functional and academic levels, needs, limitations, and necessary accommodation. You should know that this student exit summary is required by the IDEA law. If your child is in high school and in 11th grade, you should start making an inquiry asking about the student exit summary for your child. This summary also includes recommendations that will support the student in reaching his or her post-school goals after leaving the school system. So it's not just about what was mentioned in the first bullet, but it should also include information um, that will help wherever the student is going to a college or a job position, etc., that will support him or her in reaching these goals after school. The summary should be completed during the final year of high school, of his or her high school career, and be provided to the student before he or she exits the high school, whether that means graduating or when they reach the age of 21. According to IDEA, an individual with a disability is entitled to receive special education and other services from the age of 3, when he or she may be in preschool, until he or she gets to be 21 years of age. Please be aware that if one of the options that we're looking at in terms of the child's future is college, please be aware that when the child reaches 21 years of age, IDEA uh, ends. The way the law is written, they will provide resources and services to a child, to an individual with disabilities, until he or she reaches the age of 21. So when a parent asks me, how can I make sure that the college will be able to abide and pursue the goals that are in my child's IEP? And I tell her, unfortunately, that's not the case, because the way the law is written, when the child reaches 21 years of age or graduates, uh, the services end. That does not mean that there'll be other services that will support your child. Remember when I mentioned the thing about the example about what how we can address my child's needs, his educational needs, his recreational needs. All those things are part of the conversation that you have to have with other individuals who are discussing your child's future needs and all that. So the summary must be completed by a staff member or by staff members who are familiar with the student's functional or academic levels, his or her accomplishments, needs, necessary accommodations, and post-school goals. Uh, I uh, I didn't mention this here, but uh, you will see at the bottom part of this. Let me bring it out here. There's an area here where I have attached. You should see them on your screen. Um, 5 documents. Not this PowerPoint. Them represent this PowerPoint here. Also, I attach 4 other handouts that address different issues regarding this topic here. So please feel free to review these documents at the end of the presentation. Okay. So once again, this summary must be completed by a staff member, and it's usually done in the last year of the student's school history, typically the 12th grade. Okay. All right. Uh, when we're talking about the people who can contribute to the student's exit summary, they include, yes, the student can be a member that contributes information to this summary. Okay. Also, the student's family, a special ed teacher or general ed teacher. Many of our children are placed in integrated co-teaching, ICT classrooms, where they have 2 teachers, a special ed teacher and a general education teacher. Also, the guidance counselor, school psychologist, service providers, adult service providers, all these people who have had contact and have worked with your child and have meaningful information to contribute should be able to uh, indicate that on the student exit summary. Okay, the last thing about the summary here, the student exit summary should help the student better understand the impact of his or her disability. Okay, let me just stop there. I get this uh, comment from parents a lot. We do here uh, because I tell parents, at some point, your child may come up to you and say, "Mom, why am I different?" or something to that effect. Once again, it depends on the age, the disability, the severity of the disability. Maybe that son, that daughter will not mention that concern, But you should have that understanding in your mind. How does my child's disability impact him or her in the ways that will affect his or her life after they finish school? How will it affect the way they communicate with other people? Will they be able to understand what's being told to them? Will they be able to issue an appropriate response? Um, there's so many bullet points that we could come up with, but basically, if your child expresses that concern, that issue, uh, that he needs to know why he or she is different, you have to find a way to give some kind of response. I can also recommend that you speak to a counselor, um, and other people that may have expertise to help you address that question, like maybe the school psychologist or other. Okay, so if it comes up, um, your child is entitled to some kind of response that he can understand or she can understand. So, and you have to be able to respond in a very appropriate way that he or she can understand what your response means. So we are trying to help him understand the impact of the disability and also communicate his or her individual strengths and needs. These are some of the things that the student exit summary must include, not just what the issues and challenges were, but what are the strengths and needs as that he or she possesses that may help him or her live a more interesting life after school. Okay, and the student exit summary should also include um, the supports that will be helpful to him or her in post-school life. Um, this is an important document, the student exit summary. Make sure that upon finishing high school, whether through graduation or through exiting it out because he or she is 21 years away, this document is generated and given to your child. Um, Besides what we talked about, this document provides strategies to help the students successfully achieve their goals. It also provides documentation to help determine eligibility for adult, vocational, and rehab services. It could be used as a document for financial benefits, yes. It's also helpful for residential placement, and it should list accommodations that he or she will need in college or the workplace. If the student exit summary is written up carefully with uh, um, these points of information provided, it should be a very helpful document, not just to your son, your daughter, but to school of college officials, uh, workplace people, the boss, etc., etc. Um, Once again, he wants his own place to live. So, what kind of resources are there that support an individual that would like to engage life by living in his or her own apartment or something like that? Uh, Once again, you know your child better than I do, but why shouldn't he or her have exposure, have opportunities to make his or her life as beneficial, as successful, and as productive and happy as possible, just like any other individual? Our children are owed that. All right, here is something that once again came up in a conversation recently. So I want to give you some information about this. We're talking about TLC. I remember back in the day, we used to, that was the acronym for tender loving care. And of course, parents have a lot of TLC for their children. But in this case, we are talking about an individual that's known as a transition linkage coordinator or transition coordinator who may be the school counselor. Anyway, this individual ensures that the process is followed appropriately, the appropriate transition planning for students with disabilities. The TLC may serve as a contact with outside agencies and help students with applications and other relevant transition activities. Let me just add some to that. Yeah, one of his or her responsibilities is to invite outside agencies to become part of that IEP team when we are discussing transition issues and services. So that person may be able to provide settings, opportunities, experiences that will be beneficial to that child as they transition from school to life after school. So the transition coordinator serves as a liaison between vocational schools and special ed teachers to monitor student progress. They also identify, establish, and maintain connections or linkages with community agencies, businesses, and they also can identify transition service provided by community agencies. So once again, this is a very important individual. They used to be located in the individual schools, but now I believe they are currently housed in the district office. So if you have a child in Manhattan that is going to school in the Lower East Side, he will be going to District 1 there and look for, or the parent will be going to the calling the District 1 office and inquire that they want to speak to the transition coordinator. Uh, Besides the things that we mentioned above, the coordinator is also involved with identifying gaps in transition services. That's really important. We want this process to be as seamless and as organized and as together as possible. This is not a good place where all of a sudden a gap appears, no one knows what's going on, or there's a lot of confusion, and that will not be of any help or assistance to the individual who is part of this conversation. So he or she makes sure that there are no gaps in the service transmission place. Okay. Also, the coordinator involved with carrying out school and community needs assessments. There are a number of assessments that will be given to the individual to basically determine, once again, areas of interest, areas that identify things that that individual likes to do. Uh, I mentioned to parents that one of the aid organizations that the transition coordinator can invite are individuals from Access VR. Access VR is part of the New York State Department of Education, whose job is to work with parents and individuals with disabilities in helping them understand and prepare for life after school. They provide a lot of really good services. I think I indicated it in the resource section of my presentation. But if I was going to a meeting and discussing my son's after school, plans and needs, concerns, and I would say to the IEP team in general, but specifically to the coordinator, the linkage coordinator, I need to see someone from Access VR who can join us and help us understand some of the things that we are discussing and some of the services that Access VR provides. They may be helpful to my son. Um, Please don't assume that these things will be covered. Please don't ever make assumptions like that. Always, always, always ask questions. It's very important that you're aware of that. That's how you demonstrate that you are an effective advocate, by the way. Also, the coordinator, the transition coordinator, the last bullet here, will also assist students and families in understanding what all this is about, the transition system, and how we can go about accessing services that will support my son or my daughter. All right. Finally, a little bit about we're almost done here. Uh, Parents as member of the transition team. This is what I tell parents. Once your child starts high school, um, the focus of the IEP team should totally be organized around transition issues. So when I read about this, I sometimes see that the IEP team is now considered the transition team. So that would be a good way for you to picture it. The IEP now, the team now is totally focused on preparing my son, my daughter for life after school. What services, what supports, what evaluations need to be done to make these things possible? So you should know that you are a very important member of the transition team. Actually, um, IDEA says that you must be a member of the team, as we say here. Parents must be invited to the IEP transition meetings and be informed prior to the meeting that we will be discussing transition issues. You should get a phone call and also and or a letter that says that you're being invited to a meeting of the transition team to discuss transition issues. The IDEA now says that you are entitled to be part of this meeting. Parents know their child best and remain important members of the IEP team until their son or daughter reaches the age of majority, which is 18 in most states. Let me address 2 points in this sentence, which is really important. Uh, uh, you should know that the only person that you will always or should always see at the IEP meetings or transition meetings is you. Throughout your child's educational history, there will be various and different people on the IEP team. Your child's uh, IEP team meeting when he was in the third grade, it will not be the same meeting or personnel at the meeting when he is in high school. So it's really important that you know that you follow the process throughout your child's educational career or history. And the benefit of having parents serve on the transition team is that they can help the team pinpoint the specific skills needed by their children after they exit high school. You can really nail it down in terms of, this is the way my son thinks, reacts, functions, and all that. And we need to take all these points into consideration when we are looking at resources, opportunities, placements, etc., for my son or daughter. Parents should participate in selecting goals, the kinds of learning experiences their child will have, and the kinds of skills they will be taught. Here, let me just go back a little bit on this point. The only way this can make really good sense to parents, this last sentence, selecting goals, learning experiences, skills, etc., is that parents need to intimately understand their child's disability. That means, what does autism look like? How does it affect the way my child behaves, functions, talks, works, plays, etc.? It doesn't matter what the disability is, if it's learning disabilities or hearing impairment or any one of the 13 disability categories recognized by the Office of Special Ed Programs, which is part of the Department of Education in Washington. We need to have an intimate understanding of our child's disability, and also very important, how it affects the way they learn and function in this classroom, at home, and also how will that disability impact my child's skill set, behaviors, etc., at school, at a college, at a job site, etc. So please do everything you can to inform yourself about your child's disability and the way it affects his learning, um, behaviors, etc., etc. It's a very important point. Okay, let me move on to the next one. Here are some requirements for the transition planning. Once again, and I repeat this because it's really important, the IEP team or transition team must develop appropriate, measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition evaluations related to training, education, employment, and where appropriate, independent living skills. Age-appropriate transition assessments such as personal interest inventories. And there's so many out there that you are welcome to explore when you go into your computer, your laptop, open up Google, and put in personal interest inventories for students with disabilities, something like that. And you will see the vast range of inventories that could be used to identify your child's special talents and interests. Uh, of course, you probably already aware of your child's special talents and interests that we need to, also learn about from you. But uh, as you can see, there are all kinds of tests and inventories that we can use in addition to, add something to it that maybe you did not. All right. In developing your child's transition goals, the IEP team, which includes your child's, let me address that. I didn't address that, did I? Um, Under IDEA, your child can be a member of the IEP team, or in this case, the transition team. Once again, you know your child better than I do. You know whether he or she has the capability, the patience, the wherewithal to understand some of the issues that we are talking about. So yeah, we know of individual students who have become members of their IEP team and the transition team. It kind of makes sense. All this, all this planning, all these experiences are designed to assist that individual during school and also, as we see now, for life after school. So in developing these goals, the IEP team, excuse me, I should say transition team, must also determine what instructional and educational experiences will help prepare him or her for a successful transition after school. Uh, okay, no, okay. Once the goals are developed, the IEP team must then develop a statement of the transition services, including courses of study needed to assist your child in reaching those goals. So if you have a child who's currently attending, maybe just begun, or in the middle of high school, you should go review his or her IEP and see if any of this information that we're looking at now is provided in his or her IEP in terms of like transitional goals, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully they will be there and you could address those goals and at the meeting to whatever extent you find appropriate. Okay, okay, this is what, yeah. Uh, when does transition planning begin? Uh, Depending on the state that you live in, this is, it changes or yeah, it's not a constant, but uh, usually we can say that at age 14, sometimes younger, the IEP must include a statement of transition needs. This describes the course of study that will lead to graduation. So when a child is 14, that means he or she is in junior high school. And what I tell parents is it is really not a good idea to engage all this planning, et cetera, when your child has reached 11th grade. There will still be information and plans generated to help him or her, but the earlier you engage this process, the better off everyone will be. Yes, it's a complicated process preparing a child, a youth, for life after school is not an easy matter. There's so much that we need to talk about and review, agree on before we can, leave this process. So you should also know that the IEP team is to consider other educational experiences in the school or in the community that can help the student achieve his or her desired post-school goals or outcome, whether they be college, employment, vocational or technical training, or independent living. So this is where the transition coordinator comes in. He or she understands the community around this where the school is located and has arranged visits, met with people in different programs, perhaps being able to set up opportunities for an individual to be an intern at a school. Uh, this young lady, she just loves artwork. She just loves to paint. She loves colors, and we found a school, a technical school, not too far from where she lives, that was willing to take her on as an intern to work in a department with artists. Remember, she already loves art. This is just giving her more uh, um, impulse to follow through on her plans. And usually I found out as when I was a classroom teacher that when that student is engaged in whatever is going on, teaching, learning, reading assignment, or and doing something that they have a passion to, they will absolutely dig into it. They will really squeeze all the juice out of it because they already are motivated. They already have that passion to pursue these goals. So let's take advantage of this wonderful passion that they have and turn it into learning opportunities for them. That's really an important point to consider. Uh, this transition statement must be based on the student's needs, preferences, and goals, and should be reviewed every year as part of the IEP process. That usually means when we do the annual review of the student, we need to make sure that the goals are appropriate and supporting the student and meeting what the what the goals state that they should have. Okay. Uh, this question here, what strategies and activities must be included in this statement of needed transition services? So here we have a breakdown of some of the uh, points that need to be included in the IEP, in the transition statement. Instruction can take place in a classroom, small group, one-to-one learning. Many different types of venues are are available for him or her. Let me see what's going on here. Excuse me. Mhm. I just want to make, I think it looks okay. I apologize for that. Okay, let me get this out of the way. Oh boy. Okay, it just did this. All right, I think I should have it now. Okay. All right, sorry about that. Let me just fast forward quickly. Okay, okay. Sorry. Don't know why that happened, but let's just. Oh, all right, here we go. Ay, ay, ay. Sorry. I don't know. Okay, I think we're almost there. All right. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I apologize for that, folks. I do. Okay, we're almost done. So let's see what we have here. So once again, this statement, this transition statement that must be in your child's IEP should include information about these points here. Instruction. Uh, it could describe how the child can learn not just in the classroom, but in small groups, one to one, or as I stated before, at other sites, private schools, home, or in the community that I mentioned. When the example of finding a place where that child was able to act as intern twice a week in a place that's doing something that she loves, art and painting. Okay, now related services may include transportation services, speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and other supportive services necessary for a student to benefit from special education. By the way, that's a definition of related services. Services that are necessary for a student with disabilities to benefit from special education. Um, Community experiences can be very powerful experiences for students. Um, First of all, they're not in their traditional classroom or school setting, but they are, also in the community, perhaps where they live. So that's important to know. So experiences like this may be provided in communities by schools, consultant, private providers, or other agencies. Once again, this is where the transition coordinator has been working hard to provide students with these experiences and opportunities in this plan. Okay. Also, this statement of needed transition service also includes information about employment or other post-school adult living objectives. If if the team has decided that employment is something that we should discuss and help that individual with. Okay, so if that individual, that student, has with the interest, that technological interest, he was able to find a little job where he's working with laptops or other in electronic components. That needs to be addressed too. Um, can this job be, maybe start out uh, as a helper, but then lead to a career down the road? We need to discuss that too. Daily living skills are types of activities most adults do every day at home and in the community. This is this is and when we're looking at this, this is a part where the parent can offer tremendous information to the rest of the team in terms of describing how her son, how her daughter manages her day. How does that day start? Getting out of bed, eating, uh, s- hygiene, making her room, etc., etc. All things that we need to have an understanding of in order to have an understanding of what kind of supports and opportunities she or he can have. And I think I mentioned the functional vocational evaluation already, which provides information about job or career interests, aptitudes, and skills. And by the way, this is the initial evaluation that an individual that goes to the Access VR office. Every borough in New York City has at least one location that contains an Access VR office where a parent and the child can go and ask questions and take this evaluation. If the transition team, including the student and parents, agrees that services in one or more of the areas above is not needed, the IEP must state so and provide a rationale. For example, yes, my son is meticulous. Uh, he lines up all his shoes very, really well, tucks them underneath the bed or his closet, and he cleans up the room. He's really, very fastidious. So perhaps we don't need to concern this component, but we need to address it in the IEP and provide a reason why it's not necessary because of his natural sense of being organized and clean, etc., etc. He's fastidious, etc. Okay, and regarding regulations and policies regarding transition in New York State, school districts are required to begin transition service when the student is 14 years or earlier. Uh, some parents want their child to start getting engaged in this, and the school to start getting engaged when he or she is 12 years old, 13 years old. Once again, the earlier we engage this process, the better off everyone will be. Transition services must be included in the IEP, the child's IEP, uh, from the time they reach the age 15 through they reach the age of exit, 21 years of age. The IDEA promotes the development of an individualized transition plan for students who are 14 years of age and older that focuses on community reference learning to help prepare students for adult roles in their community. One of the things I tell parents is that once again, everything that we do is to prepare your child for life after school. And typically, they will be spending at least part of their life in the community where they were raised, born and raised. So he or she should have a really good understanding of what a community is, uh, how to understand his relationship to the community, how he becomes part of it, what services does the community offer? Where can I go for recreational activities in the community? Yeah, so the community is not just a community, it's a great learning arena. All right, so here are some of the options that are available for post-school opportunities. Vocational education, because we have decided that college is not an appropriate objective for my child, but perhaps we can provide training for a job that does not require a college degree. It offers courses provided by career colleges, vocational schools, trade schools, and community colleges. Vocational ed provides job-focused training for specific roles or careers. Vocational education also provides the development of good work habits, appropriate workplace specific job training. Once again, I keep mentioning um, uh, Access VR. We've had some workshops that were conducted by counselors from Access VR in the past, and it's not just about job training. It's about this is how you got to look when you go to work. Uh, Baggy jeans, no. Slippers, sandals, no. You have to look and dress and act in the specific way that that job site requires you to have. So these are all issues that are covered in vocational education and in conversations that the team has. Adult education are programs providing services to persons aged 16 years or older who are not in high school or college. Adult education programs include GED and also vocational programs. A couple of more options here. Adult services and community services. These are designed for individuals who may have more severe levels of the impact of the disability, and this may be a more appropriate um, outlook to have for our children, depending on that. So the definition of an adult service, community service are basically any service or support for which disabled adults are eligible and include, excuse me, adult day service, home health care, respite, home modifications, home delivery meals. So these people will depend more on the community that they live in to, to get through the day and experience positive life as possible after school. Independent living services and centers and community participation include life skills training, counseling, advocacy, and other services that allow adults with disabilities to live and work in the community as independently as possible. As you can see, you have seen the word independent, independently mentioned a number of times. Once again, at some point, parents will not be able to meet or be there for their children to meet their needs and had to come up with other options. And we've been talking about some of these options that include working with outside organizations to provide our children with opportunities to develop skills for life after school. Okay. Under IDEA, states are required to notify students as to as to what their rights will be when they reach the age of majority. Okay, this is an important point. Age of majority is just another way of saying when your child reaches his 18th birthday. And what that means, according to IDEA and state law, at this age, your rights as a parent to, let's say, to impact your child's life, to affect decisions that they make, to make decisions for them, those rights that you've been having ever since they were born will be transferred to your son and to your daughter. And as we say here, that will, in this context, legally, will liberate him or her from your parental control. Parents are liberated from responsibilities regarding their child under the age of majority provision. And however, you know your child better than I do. Do you think your child will be able to fend for himself or herself uh, based upon your understanding of his or her needs? That is something that you need to think about and consider. But you need to decide whether you want to get involved in the guardianship process. Now, that is a legal process where individuals are identified to watch out and not take care of everything, but just to make sure that the child's rights are protected, that he or she conducts himself appropriately in different settings, et cetera, et cetera. It's really important that you understand that you do have this option in case you think that your child will need support after he or she graduates or exits high school. Once the student reaches the age of majority, 18 years of age, he or she assumes the rights of the parental role and can invite parents to the IEP meeting. Interesting. Uh, Once your child is become liberated, the school is no longer required to invite you unless they have become legal guardians of the child, of the adult child. Uh, so I know this is a lot of information, but it's important. And once again, it is something that you can bring up to the attention of the IEP team, so you have a complete and thorough understanding about this, especially if you're interested in the information on this slide here about parent rights, age of majority, guardianship process, etc., etc. So yes, please ask those questions. Okay, finally, as I said, because we receive phone calls from parents, once again, the child is in the 11th grade, it's already April, be starting the last year in September, and they engage the transition process not that early, but it's really helpful for you, for him, or for her to start planning for the process early. Um, Start thinking about and planning for your child's transition to post-secondary opportunities. That means life after school when they are in middle school and junior high school. Successful planning involves many things that include identifying support services for him or her, involving adult service agencies, and really, really importantly, teaching your child self-advocacy skills to the best of his or her knowledge and capacity. It is really, really important. And I know right now we still don't understand or know if and when the schools will be open for the new school year starting in September. My understanding is that the governor Cuomo has asked the school system to address that and send them some documents, some planning about what that may look like. They have to be reviewed and authorized by the state education department. So right now, that planning is supposed to, already have started, but definitely by July, they may have an announcement to make about where the schools will be open for the new school year. So please keep tuned to that. That's kind of important. And finally, the last couple of slides list a series of resources that I welcome you to visit that give you more information about this. Uh, Let me just briefly go through them quickly, and then I'll see if there's any questions. P12. Okay, P12, as it says in the quote, stands for pre-kindergarten through grade 12. That's what the P12 office stands for in the New York City Department of Education. And of course, they provide assistance in developing and coordinating, among other things, vocational services. And in the red is their website that you can use to visit this page, this place, and all that. Here's the Access VR that I've been mentioning quite a few times. And it's an acronym that stands for Adult Career and Continuing Education Services slash vocational rehabilitation. As I said, they're part of the New York State Education Department and absolutely an important resource for parents who are involved in this conversation with helping prepare their children for life after school. The Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, or OPWDD, they do, among other things, support and provide day services for individuals with developmental disabilities and developmental disabilities. And that's their website down there. Another good resource for parents to visit. Um, the Office of Mental Health, OMH, supports day services for those with severe psychiatric disabilities. Once again, um, there are so many resources out there that are designed to meet virtually every kind of need that individuals that have disabilities may have. As we are seeing here, people that have severe psychiatric disabilities, Office of Mental Health will be a good resource. SSA, the Security Administration, provides benefits to people of any age who will have a significant impairment because of a mental or physical disability. Adults also must be unable to do substantial work to qualify for some programs. Some programs that the SSA offers for people with disabilities include SSDI, which stands for Social Security Disability Insurance, SSI, Supplemental Security Income, and there's PASS, Plans to Achieve Self-Support, also Medicaid and Medicare. There are plenty of resources out there. If you are not aware of them, ask for them, ask about them. You need to have information so that you can make appropriate uh, decisions, appropriate and necessary decisions about your child's life after school. So I hope that you have benefited from this webinar. Okay, let me see if I can do this without messing things up. Okay. All right. So please feel free to type in your questions. I'll be around for a little while longer. So please, at the bottom where I see the arrow here, you can type in a message and I will read it and also give you a response, okay? So please feel free to do so. And once again, I hope that you have gained some information, valuable information from this experience, this webinar. Please, 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 I repeat it again, sorry to do so. Be aware of everything that you do regarding your child's education, whether it's preschool, primary school, middle school, or high school, is to help prepare your child for life after school. You should, you know him or her better than I do, and you know, and I know that you want him or her to have a beneficial life as possible, and that's really, really good. Due to the nature and impact of the disability, you also recognize that he or she would need supports, assistance, uh, uh, organizations, etc., to help him or her out, enjoy life as much as possible. Once again, just have to be aware of the fact that you have a right to be involved in these conversations. You have a right to ask many, many, many questions, and I suggest that you do so. Okay, so okay, I hope that okay, okay. Mhm. Let's see. All right, so as I said, we are also preparing for a series of webinars in the month of June. I am working with a professional mediator. We're going to be putting together a couple of webinars that I think you will benefit from. We haven't come up with the dates yet, but they should be arrived this week. Please visit our website that you saw at the beginning of the presentation, www.synergiany.org. When you click the link, you'll be taken to our website, and then, excuse me, you can find the calendar button. Once you click the calendar button, you will be able to see the dates where we offer webinars, a description of the webinar, and also a link that will let you connect with the webinar uh, for that particular event. So we also have a working, we do have a webinar schedule on the 15th of June that's going to be provided by someone that we invited to spend, and they will talk about self-advocacy. So these are individuals who have, disabilities, and they will be talking about what is the best or what are appropriate ways for an individual who has a disability to to uh, advocate for themselves, make sure that they get something positive out of life too. Mhm. Okay, so excuse me, please. Hello, hello. Okay, sorry about that. So once again, thank you so much for your attendance. Once again, I downloaded the PowerPoint and four other handouts uh, that you can download and read them later on. Also, at the end of the presentation, as you saw, uh, oh, I didn't tell you that yet. Oh, I apologize. Oops, oops. Okay, let me Um, Here's other additional resources that I put in there that you're welcome to visit to. Um, I took the effort to identify what each link uh, was about. So you can see that the Parent Center Hub has an article, a very extensive one, on transition to adulthood, as does another organization named Pacer. They address different perspectives of the transition to adulthood. The third bullet um, addresses supporting youth with disabilities and transition planning. The fourth bullet by an organization called Understood is about IEP transition planning. We'll give you more information about what that looks like. Uh, and the fifth link has a series of resources that are dedicated for parents who have children in the New York City District 75. District 75 is another component of the New York City special education system that is dedicated to students who have moderate to severe needs. But they also have an Office of Transition Services that I welcome you to visit. Um, the next link uh, is about another organization that is what has wonderful resources regarding transition and preparing our children for college. It's they're a relatively new organization and they offer a lot of good tips and resources for you, as does the other one. One of them, the next to the last one, also talks about college planning from a different perspective. And the last bullet, the last resource there addresses the transition linkage coordinator. Um, this is only a very partial list of resources that are available. You're welcome to investigate them on your own. I hope that you find you have benefited from this here. So once again, okay, wait, let me try something else here. Okay. Hmm. People. Oh, gee, I am trying to unmute in case you just would prefer to state your question or comment. So please bear with me. Oh, people can see a screen. Hmm. I apologize. I don't see the little tab to unlink uh, so I can hear you. So I apologize for that. Anyway, so okay, I think we'll call it an end to the webinar. Once again, thank you very much for your participation. And if you have any questions, you can um, use the same website to contact me. You can also give a call to our receptionist. Let me pull out her card here. Okay. Hello, if you're still there, you can reach me by calling 212-643-2840. That's 212-643-2840. My name is Mr. Rivera. My extension is 30307, or you can just leave your message with our person at the office, and she will relay that information to me, and I will call you and see how I can help you. So please take care. This is the end of the webinar. Take care. Okay, I see that there's still a few people that are here. Okay.